It's time to go through the papers with former Chief Secretary to the Treasury and former University Challenge contestant. Is that right, David?
I'm afraid I was, but not a very successful one.
Oh. Yes, oh, right. Oh, OK.
We had a rehearsal and we beat this Scottish team. So we went out and had a drunken celebration, and then when we did the real thing, we got ourselves...
Well, there you go. You've got no credibility to Boris Bash then this morning.
Well, indeed.
But then I was 18 at the time, and Boris is 55.
Well, there you go.
Well, yeah, broadcaster Clare Muldoon is also with us this morning. Clare, your starter for 10.
Yep.
Archbishop's Jubilee plea to forgive disgraced Andrew, as in Prince Andrew.
Yes. Now, I'm a bit baffled by this because, as far as I'm concerned, apparently Andrew's done nothing wrong. So why is he seeking forgiveness, and why do we have to forgive him? That's the question.
Can you be forgiven if you don't seek forgiveness?
No.
Well, there you go.
No, so that's...
Blimey, we're getting a bit deep now.
No, it's a genuine theological question.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't seek forgiveness...
And that's not us being cynical at all.
Yeah.
That's just the facts of it.
Yeah.
Bare bones.
But is he not trying to make amends? I mean, he said in his letter when he settled out of court that, you know, he was sorry for any... I can't remember the exact wording now, but, you know, he said he was sorry for any hurt that she felt had been...
Well, of course he would. I mean, that's a PR document in itself, isn't it?
I don't know if that's all...
Are we allowed to interject a bit of reality about Andrew?
Oh, here we go.
No, well...
No, but Andrew did his bit in the Falklands, and there's no doubt about that. But at every other time, Andrew has been the least charming, most charmless, always expecting people to defer to him without giving them a valid reason for doing so. I mean, I had no views about Andrew 40 years ago when, as a young energy minister, I went to Egypt, where Andrew had recently visited and had an experienced British ambassador tearing his hair out in tufts about Andrew wandering around the place, pushing people into the swimming pool and so on. And I had no particular views on Andrew when I myself went to Abu Dhabi. Unfortunately, I was travelling first class. I go to my seat and there's something covered in a blanket slumped there, and a couple of policemen come and move me on because he had decided to take my seat. Now, the me of today would have raised quite a row about that. Yeah. The me of yesterday, I thought, well, who cares? But actually, looking back on it, Andrew's whole life has been devoted to expecting deference without providing any reason in terms of charm or achievement why that deference should be offered.
Right, but let's just, I mean...
Bring it back to the Archbishop's plea. This is on the weekend of his mother's Platinum Jubilee, of her reign of this country, for heaven's sake. And the Archbishop has waded in saying, and he's been quite vocal in what he thinks the way the country should be running in the present times in any event. However... in order to be forgiven, you must seek forgiveness, which he hasn't.
Yes, just to clarify, when that settlement happened, so he regretted his association with Jeffrey Epstein, but he did not apologise.
Yes, of course. But I think one thing the Archbishop has said, and has pleaded us all to be, is to be a bit more forgiving on all aspects of life, you know, to cover everything. And I think that's quite a good point, because we're all so quick, especially the court of public opinion, especially in social media, you know, to drown out voices, you know, to create one's own echo chamber of their own beliefs.
Well, does that forgiveness extend to Boris Johnson, who himself has admitted that he's got things wrong, that he said sorry?
Well, I think, you know, as you said in the last segment, Paul, we've got 2 by-elections coming up. That will be an absolute blinder for the public to go and show their forgiveness to Boris or their support. But we need to move on from that. Yeah. And I think the mainstream media itself, and we're all a bit culpable because we've been putting this under a lens for so long that we really have to get over it. We really have to start getting on with our lives.
But when you get to Andrew, I mean, what is the point in forgiving a man who, well, it's the Boris point, isn't it, doesn't think he's done anything wrong? What is the point of forgiving a man who has shown no signs in all of his adult life that he actually has matured as a person?
Well, I think the Archbishop would say, if I dare dip into my logical background, would be that actually forgiveness is a two-way thing. So the people who forgive actually get something from it as well, because it's not eating you up anymore. The point is, they may not be seeking forgiveness, but we can just all stop hating and just move on.
Well,
move on.
What
about forgive but don't forget? So, you know, you say, look, you did something wrong, you're only human, you've paid out of court to settle it. We're not going to bring you back in as a working member of the royal family, but let's talk about something else.
This is the issue. I mean, he's not hated, he's despised, I think. He's despised for perfectly good and valid reasons. The fact of the matter is that Andrew wants to come back in, and any attempt to sort of forgive him or to have archbishops saying, you know, please, we've got to sort of be kind to him, he'll interpret that as meaning there's an overwhelming majority of people who want him back on the balcony. He does not understand how normal people react.
But he's not going to be on the balcony because he's not a working royal. I think that was an absolute blinder that the palace have played. Meghan and Harry won't be there. Prince Andrew won't be there because the Jubilee balcony is for working royals only.
And let them stick to that. But, you know, if there's a way he can get in by helping his mum out of her carriage or whatever, he'll do it because Andrew is not prepared to vacate the limelight. And anybody who says Andrew should be forgiven, he will seize upon as a justification for him continuing his campaign.
Well, you've described a narcissistic character, in which case there's no point in actually forming any form of forgiveness, and that leopard certainly will not change his spots.
Right. Well, what do you guys make of what Stephen's had to say? He says, I'm a practising Christian and do forgive those who offend or misjudge. However, it is not necessary in this modern world to forgive unconditionally. The Christian eye for an eye principle remains for many of us. The Archbishop of Canterbury himself has rewritten centuries-old Christian tenets to match modern.
No, because the eye for an eye is Old Testament, and the New Testament, which is what Archbishop of Canterbury would be working from, is very much
judgment
not
like Pontius Pilate.
It's the other cheek.
That's what Stephen says. But GBNews.uk. Thank you for getting in touch with us this morning, Stephen. By the way,
I forgive you, Stephen. I forgive you.
Yeah, and I should just point out, Claire, you do have kind of theological pedigree. You sat on the Roman Catholic Synod recently.
Yes.
Point out you do have an expertise in this area.
Yep.
Just whilst we're on the Royals, David, before we move on, Daily Mail page 2 talking about the Sussexes' popularity slumping to an all-time low. Could this weekend be a comeback for them?
I don't think so.
You're so negative this morning.
But I mean, I'm negative because these are people it's impossible not to be. I mean, Harry is an odd chap now. I think he should have stayed in the army. He'd have been much better off if he'd stayed in the army, where the discipline and framework worked for him. He and Meghan, I mean, I rather hope when Meghan arrived in the family that she would be a breath of fresh air and her background would make it much easier for them to deal with Commonwealth issues and so on. But it was perfectly obvious that what Meghan wanted was to come to this country and immediately become the sort of new Diana. She didn't want to be flogging round Salford on a wet Monday opening a hospital or doing any of that kind of stuff. And the fact of the matter is she couldn't wait to get out of the UK. So why is she back? The answer is she isn't back because she loves anybody here or loves the idea of being a serious junior member of the royal family. She's back because Netflix are back with tens of millions of dollars, and it's a cynical ploy.
Well, the family certainly love Harry and will undoubtedly love little Lilibet and Archie. And I have a theory that seeing those little faces and the British public falling in love with some new little royals might actually warm the temperature towards them. I might be wrong, but that's my prediction. I think people might
we can only hope,
soften.
Can't we?
Yeah, I hope people might soften a little bit.
Yeah.
Peace and love.
Talk about land of hope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Moving hastily.
Yeah, exactly. Claire, do you want to talk about the NHS? This is on the front page of The Guardian, and this is from peace and love to violence against GPs.
Yeah, we need to keep this in context. It's been covered in every single paper this morning. Ministers accused of fueling anger as rise in violence hits GP surgeries. Attacks on GPs double in 5 years. Now, they're still very small numbers. We're talking about police recorded 1,068 aggressive incidents last year as patients chased appointments compared with only 586 in 2017, so pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. As we all know, and it's been reiterated, I don't think there's one single person in this country, one single person sitting here today, who's not had an issue or known someone who has had an issue in trying to get to see their GP. And I'm not just talking about seeing them face-to-face or seeing them on a Zoom call. There are plenty of theories out there about what's going to happen, but people ultimately are feeling scared, OK? They want to see their GP, they want to know what's wrong with them. We've also got Dr Google that everybody seems to use, and, you know, that comes with a list of ailments, of symptoms that they feel must be addressed. You can't address it without seeing your GP, they would say. But the attacks are coming because people are pent up. People are angry, people are anxious. And, you know, the first port of call, they always used to get a bad name, the medical receptionist, who sometimes we felt might have been medically trained themselves, or they would appear to be medically trained when all they were trying to do was triage the calls through. And you get to know patients, and you get to know what's serious and what's not. But unfortunately, as we have spoken about before, this issue of not seeing GPs, of not being able to see your GPs, has merely kicked the problem down the road. It's kicked the can down the road. We're seeing rises in A&Es, A&E admissions. We're seeing rises in A&E, people sitting in A&E. And let's forget, A&E stands for accident and emergency. Now, if you were to go, and I would bet my bottom dollar on this, if you were to go walk into Charing Cross or any major hospital in any major city, walk into the accident and emergency, there'll be very few accidents and very few emergencies there. It looks and feels like a GP waiting area, I'm sure. Yeah. What do? Well, we try and open up. We need to get back to normal. But the thing that people don't understand is when the mainstream media are banging on about this, fueling anger. I mean, listen to the language is violent in itself. It's very, very strong. Every GP practice now has seen an increase in appointments and demand for appointments. The average person used to see their GP maybe once a year. That's now increased to 3 times a year. So that threefold increase in appointment demand, plus the fact they've got less GPs now, we're seeing less GPs, less young medical students going into general practice, and we're also seeing lots of older ones wanting to retire early, and actually, more worryingly, more are ending their careers through burnout and depression.
Or going abroad. Lots of medics going overseas.
Well, they say the definition of an alcoholic is a person who drinks more than
the doctor.
Yeah.
I've not heard that. Oh.
Yeah, oh, you must have heard that.
Yeah. What have you heard about me?
All the jokes you've always heard.
Guys, we'll have to leave it there
we're out
just
of
for
time.
now. But we're out of time. Thank you, David. Thank you, Claire. More from them to follow throughout the morning here on GB News. And by the way, if anything you hear or you see, if you're listening to us on the radio, of course, that you want to join in the conversation, do let us know. GBviews@gbnews.uk.